Hi, everyone. This is Stephanie from Vegan Mainstream, and we are going to be getting started in a few minutes for today's Webinar Wednesday. If you are new to Webinar Wednesday, I want to welcome you. It is right at the top of the hour, and what we're going to be doing today is talking about goal setting and kind of how do you set the tone of your business for the year and why goal setting is not just so important, but kind of the ABCs so you can get your hands around it. Since this is our first webinar of the year, I'm really excited. We have a large amount of people who have registered for this session today. So I'm excited about jumping in and getting everyone on board. Hopefully everyone can hear me. We have no problems with volume or anything. If you're looking at this on our website, you should see a Facebook comment box below. If you could just say hello and let me know you're there, let me know you can hear me well, all that good stuff. That will really help me know we can get started here. All right. I see the views are coming in, so I'm super excited. Looks like people are just getting connected. We sent a reminder, so for most of you, you should have clicked on that link if you are watching it. Let's see. Let's talk about a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. Perfect. Thank you so much, Lori. I'm glad you can hear me. Perfect. That helps a lot. Okay. So why don't we do this? Let's talk about a little bit from a logistics standpoint, and then we will go live into the webinar. So logistics, number one, this is recorded. So if you miss something, want to come back to something, you will be able to do that very easily and quickly. And if you have to run away, maybe in the middle of the session, you will be able to come back and watch it. You will be able to watch it live on this page. We offer the webinars for all of our webinars this year. They will be available for the next 30 days. So you got 30 days before we do our next webinar, and then it will replace it on this replay page. So feel free to take notes. Let's make this interactive. We're going to be on Twitter as well. We're using the hashtag VM Marketing. So if you want to post a note, ask a question, please feel free to do that, as well as we will be live tweeting. So with that, if it sounds like everyone can see, that's great. Once again, I want to use the comment box on the website. So if you have questions during the webinar, please, please, please post them there. Post them as we go, because what's great about using the Facebook comment section at the bottom of the page is if you have a question, I can quickly and easily address it either right away, or if I let you know if I have a slide coming up, I can let you know. Okay, it looks like people are starting to post. Say hello. Hello, everyone. Looks like people are coming in. This is great. We had about 200 people register, so I'm expecting a large group tonight. But let's make this fun, interactive, and as exciting as it can be as we talk about goal setting. Okay, so with that, let's go into slide number one and dive in. So when I talk about goal setting, when I talk about setting the tone, a lot of times I like to start with a slide like this because I want to talk about why it's important to set goals. And I know for most of us in the back of our mind, we've heard it a million times. We've heard, 55 or 56% of the time, if you plan it, it's more likely that you will actually do it. So planning really can make a huge difference in your business. But what I want to talk about tonight, because many of you are vegan business owners, many of you, have started your own small business, you're solopreneurs, you have this passion around what you do. You have this passion around what you're trying to create, or maybe you're driven by a passion, especially because of your vegan lifestyle and why you created this business. And what I want to talk about tonight is not just standard goal setting things, but why it becomes important, because for many of you, your business is linked to your passion. So for many of us, we're pioneers. Maybe you're doing a product, you're opening the first or second or third vegan restaurant, or the only, vegan hair care line that offers A, B, and C. Or maybe you're coming out with a kids product. Maybe you do services and you offer very unique services in your community to help people coach, transition, stay vegan. Maybe you're helping people, maybe you're a vegan real estate agent and you're helping people really identify houses that fit their lifestyle. So they're living in certain areas in the country or certain areas in the city that fit or support their lifestyle, or help them find homes that tend to be more eco-friendly and all these other great things. So no matter what your business is, for many of us, you are going to be the pioneer out there. You're going to be the person who's really the alternative to the status quo. So you want to use things like your goal setting process to help you really kind of document what you've done, document what you've attempted, document what has been successful, either A, because it will help you moving forward. We don't, as vegan business owners, kind of our challenge is we don't always have the roadmap of like the 20 businesses that came before us and they did this and they tried this and they set up this and all these things worked. Where for us, often there's maybe one or two or three other people who are doing what you're doing. So therefore, if you are that kind of setting that trend, setting that status quo, by documenting, you're going to be able to leverage your own work to help you in the future, but you'll also be able to help other vegan businesses that come behind you. So continue to be that trailblazer and be that leader by setting goals and using goals, because it can have an even more far-reaching impact because of who you are, the type of business you are, and because many of us are establishing new markets, new businesses, and things that just haven't existed before. The other thing is, for many of us, we're bootstrapping it. You're pulling this together. You're doing as much as you can, maybe with these minimum budgets. And if you're thinking about ever getting funding, if you're ever thinking about getting someone to invest in your business, your goals are going to be so important, because the process of setting a goal and then achieving the goal, investors want to see that information. They want to know, okay, I'm investing in a business that had this year-long or 2-year or 3 to 5 year plan. And based on that 3 to 5 year plan, this is what they were able to achieve. So if you start to document that work now, if you start to really pull that together now, it will set you up in the future for that future fundraising request. And I say that because I think when we start off with small businesses, when we get started, we get so grinding into the product, the services, customer service, the marketing, that we forget about the future. We forget about what will it be like when my dream comes true? What will it be like when I get those customers signing up, when I have lines outside the door, when I have sold out events? And that's what I want you to do with making sure you're using your goal setting time for, is establishing what information needs to be documented and tracked. So when you have that success, when you have that big break, you have these materials for it. And then overall, goal setting, I just hate to say it, it really does lead to your success. When you're running your business, and many of you can attest to it, so if you're nodding your head or even in the comments, let me know if you can attest to this too, where you run your business and every day there's a fire drill. There's something that pops up, something that needs to be done, something that needs to be addressed. There's something on a weekly basis that may not have been in your plan, but will need and must have your attention. And what can happen in a business is we can run from fire drill to fire drill to fire drill to fire drill, and we don't hit those goals in our businesses. So therefore, 6 months from now, your business is not doing bad, but your business hasn't grown at the rate that you want it to grow. And that's because often you didn't really have a goal. You didn't have a roadmap. So when all these things popped up, all these, the website went down, email's not working, I lost an employee, I have to switch manufacturing companies because they can't produce the product, I need to find an alternate shipping tool, I'm going to hire a team of people to do A, B, and C, all those kind of logistical things that pop up in your business. As they come up, you want to be able to sit down and say, okay, wait a minute. How does this fit into my long-term goal? I'm a manufacturing business. I make product. if I'm having trouble with my packer or my co-packer, or I'm having trouble with current production, do I need to plan, or do I have a goal or a plan on transitioning to a co-packer by the end of the year? Do I have a goal or a plan to transition to a new facility? So I want to move outside of my garage to a small place. I'm not saying anything more modest, so that you can handle shipments if sales get to XYZ. And in that way, instead of handling things and solving things on very minute levels, you're going to now start to plan those things more out strategically. You're going to be looking at these things long out with a long-term approach to say, if I'm doing it today, does it impact me for the future? And how does that project, and how should I focus that task or turn it into a project so it supports my future goal? Okay, so I just wanted to give you that. I know it can feel a little bit like water when I'm talking about these things, because it's like, okay, yeah, Stephanie, I know I should be doing these goals. But I wanted to take a few minutes during this session to plant a few seeds, so that if you find yourself falling off track, if you find yourself moving away from your goals, or 30 days from now, if you haven't had a planning session for your business, I want those things that I just said to kind of pop up and say, well, wait a minute. I do need to prioritize doing goal setting. I do need to make sure I get this done, because I understand that not only does this impact my success, not only does this help me for future funding opportunities, not only does this help me for understanding what works in my business, but it can also be used for case studies to help others and other business owners. So I want you to kind of have that bigger picture on goal setting, because it's so easy to think that, hey, I just create some goals and nobody knows if I really worked on it or anything like that. Don't think of it in a vacuum. Really think about the fact that goal setting can be hugely impactful to your business and really to the larger community. Okay, so I hope I've inspired some of you guys. How many people have, and maybe I just take a quick survey of who's on the line here. If you're on the page, how many people have already done some planning for this year? Have you sat down and done some goal setting and some planning, or will you wait until maybe after this webinar, or was your plan in January to do your goal setting and planning? If so, just let me know. I'd love to hear in the comments where you kind of are in your planning stage or planning cycle. Okay. So no matter where you are, if you've already started or you're planning to do it, I want to make sure we're sitting down and talking logistically about the difference between good and bad goals. Now, you can read the slides on the page, so I don't want to hit everything on this page because you guys can look at it. But my biggest point here is that we have to make sure that your goals are truly impactful. They are things that have metrics around it, so I know I hit a goal. Like, you don't want to create goals that are like, we want the business to grow. We want to expand into new product lines. We want to reach new target markets. That's very general. That's more visionary type of thinking of where do you want to go. Where in goals, we want things that are really more trackable, very easy to say yes or no. Do we hit the goal? Are we 10% away? Are we 10% over the goal? So you want to start looking at things that have hard numbers in it, meaning if you're a small business, maybe you're a consulting business and you do a lot of consulting and coaching. And on average, if you do, maybe you're a wellness coach or a lifestyle coach, if on average you have 10 clients a month, your goal may be to increase that to 15 clients a month, to 20 clients a month. So think of hard numbers like that. The other thing you might notice when I said that is increase it in intervals that are achievable. So instead of saying, I want to have 500 customers or a very arbitrary number that you want to achieve by the end of the year, what I want you to do is look at your goals on a monthly basis so that these metrics are, what are you going to achieve, especially when it's customer reach goals or product ship goals or revenue goals. I want you to create monthly revenue goals so that we're not waiting to the end of the year to say, how did we do? We want to know by the end of January, if you have a revenue goal of $10,000, let's say example, it's a modest one. then where are we? If we're in the last week of January or rounding the last week of January, how far off are you from that goal, or have you exceeded that goal? That's where we want to be on goal setting. You really want to kind of understand what those numbers are. Are you looking at 20,000 a month? Maybe you have smaller numbers. Maybe you're looking at 5,000. There's no judgment here on what your number is, because all of us have to find a pathway to profitability. And most of the time we start out, you're starting small. So maybe you're a solopreneur. You've been in business for 3 months. Maybe you just need 3 or 4 clients a month. So that's what I want you to do. I want you to consider coming up with goals and distinguishing between the good and bad. And I also want to make sure when you're setting these goals, is these goals have to be achievable. They have to be things that you can actually do in a specific period of time, not kind of that wishing of wands of, I want to launch 10 new products. If last year you launched 2 products, I would wonder if 10 products is a little aggressive. Now, you may be bringing on new resources. You may be rolling out a new location. You may be doing things completely different, so you can do that. But the idea is then all of those sub-projects I would want to see in place before you would say that is an achievable goal. What I tend to do for a lot of people is to say, when you're starting the goal setting process, look at what you achieved last year and create a goal that is 10%, 20%, is a percentage better than what you've done in the past, at least as a starting place for some of your goals. Now, for some of us, we got to swing for the home run. So sometimes you're going to be coming up with something bigger. But as a starting place, that's where I want you to look. I want you to look at last year and use those numbers. And then the last thing about these goals, as we're kind of getting the concept down here, is I want to make sure, using that last blue button here, I want to make sure you have a goal that's impactful on your business. Now, I've talked about customer goals. I've talked about revenue goals. Those most people feel pretty good about. But what I want to make sure is you don't create these kind of spin-off personal projects that can often be goals, meaning things that we wish we could do or like to do or think would sound great, but they're not necessarily impactful to the business. They're not necessarily something that can create measurable change. An example might be, I'll use an old example I used to get from a lot of people, is they would set a goal like, I want to be on Oprah Winfrey's show. Now, that's a good goal. It's a fun goal, especially when Oprah Winfrey had her show on ABC. And yes, if you get on Oprah Winfrey, there's stories and case studies and videos. Everyone talks about the Oprah Winfrey effect and how it can help you grow your business. But I would really probably argue against that type of goal. The reason being, especially as your core goals, and when I talk about core goals, I'm talking 3 or 4 goals, and I'll talk even more about that in a few minutes, is I want to make sure that the goals that you're actively and strongly working on are goals that have some type of direct line into helping build your business. They're not so, if the stars and everything align, then yes, this will happen. I think those goals are great, but those to me should be secondary. Those should be after you get these core ones down. And to me, when I talk about the ABCs of goal setting, it's coming up with those core 3 or 4 goals that are actionable, that are things that you can actually do to make them happen. Meaning with all your effort and everything in the world, Oprah might not have just had space for you. The timing might have not been right, or you might have gotten bumped. I mean, there's a million reasons. And because a lot of that is out of your control, what I like to have people do is shy away from those types of goals. Really focus more on things that you can truly do in your business, and you can say how they will affect your business. So some of that may mean, especially if you're in online retail, you may be looking at your shipping side of your business and think about how can you either A, reduce cost. Is it around paperwork? You have a lot of paper being printed, so there's a lot of print cost. Is it around efficiency? Do you need to implement a new piece of software so that labels are automatically printed? No one's manually retyping or moving things around. Is it around having a certain amount of sales so that you guys can stock packaging in-house or get packaging cheap in-house because you can buy it from a volume discount? So that's what I want you to do. I want you to start thinking about what are those instrumental things that if my shipping was more efficient, if my shipping was more cost effective, that would bring the cost out of my business, which would increase my revenue. So now what you're doing and what we're talking about here is how you can specifically make a change in your business. Say you do cooking classes. This is a great one for anyone who does or are instructors and you do cooking classes. For a lot of people who run cooking classes, what I tell them is to think about how do you reduce your prep time and how you're going to reduce your shopping time and maybe ingredient cost. Because for every cooking class, there's cost on what recipes you use for those cooking classes. So if you have the flexibility to pick recipe 1 versus recipe 2, if you have the flexibility to do 3 versus 4, these are the types of things I want you to start thinking about from a goal setting standpoint is how do I reduce my cost or my overhead cost for cooking classes by 20% by reducing prep time, ingredients costs, and maybe number of recipes used. That's how I want your goals to be. That's how I want them to feel a lot more tangible because that's going to get you there. Okay? All right. So now we've talked about, the philosophical, I guess, side of goal setting. Now let's drill down to some of the action. Some of the things I want you to do or take action on as you kind of walk away from this webinar. All right. And what I want you to do as you're thinking about kind of setting goals is I want you to think about the process of setting goals. Now, to get to that process, whether you've started, haven't started, I know for a lot of people, it feels like it's hard to make time. I did a little bit, but I didn't have as much time. What I want you to commit to today, and you can even put it in the Facebook comments for me if you're ready to make a strong commitment, is I want you to commit to setting aside 2 hours in the next 30 days to work on goal setting. Now, could you use more time? Absolutely. But I want you to start with the basics, and I just want to make sure we get at least a couple of goals down. And by setting aside 2 hours, you should be able to get there. Now, when I say set aside time, I tell most people to set aside this time on a weekend. So pick a Saturday, pick a Sunday, because those days tend to be less demanding from your business side. Depending, if you're in retail, then Saturday and Sunday could be a little bit tricky, but pick a Saturday and Sunday. And when I say pick a day, I mean pick like February 6th, pick February 13th. Like I want you to pick a real day and write it down, put it in your calendar if you're using Google Calendars or if you're using iCalendar or Outlook or whatever tool you're using. I want you to actually put in there and block it out as 2 hours. That's your first step into goal setting. And that's going to be my first commitment I'm going to ask from you from this webinar. And the reason being is, as you can see on the page, there's all these steps to goal setting. And what you need is you need time to be able to get that done. Now, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have it all done in one setting. You could do more than one, but just get started. So like we said, start with 2 hours and let me know. I'm going to check my comments here and see if you guys anyone signing up or bold enough to commit to me on Facebook what day or when that they're going to actually do their 2 hour commitment. I'd love to hear about it, but that's really the key. Now, when I talk about the goal setting process and how you're going to use that 2 hours, that's what we're going to use this slide for. When you have your 2 hours, we want to break that up. So most of your time is really going to be between those first 4 boxes here. You're going to take that first 30 minutes and you're going to brainstorm. If you're a solopreneur and it's just you or you and your partner, try to have any of the key stakeholders in this meeting. So you and your partner set up the time. If you have a small team and you'd like to do goal setting with your full team or core team, you can do that as well. If you'd like more to kind of come up with a plan and then roll it out to the team or get team feedback, then start on your own. So it depends on your business and how you like to run your business. But for many of you, what I would say is start with you or you and your partner. And your first 30 minutes of that 2 hours is pure brainstorming. This is throwing up on a whiteboard, sheet of paper, something up. I like whiteboards the best. And you're just going to write out ideas, different things that you could do instrumental in your business to change your business. And two things. I want you to look on the sales side, like we talked about earlier. How do you get more clients? How do you get more customers? How do you get more orders online? How do you get more traffic? How do you get more visitors? I want you to start thinking about in those numbers, in the ways that you drive revenue. How do you do those? How do you get more exposure? And if we're talking exposure, what type of exposure? From an advertising standpoint, I mean, just think about all the tools from a marketing, business, planning. Then I also want you to think from an operations standpoint. How do I take out cost? How do I reduce cost? How do I increase productivity with my team, meaning either reorganizing my team, shifting responsibilities, maybe bringing in someone else for certain expertise. Cost is probably a big one, and not just cost, physical cost, but think about costs like supplies. Think about if you're able to increase that revenue, which is one of your goals, does it help you reduce costs because your supply costs, your ingredient costs, all those things start to come down. So think of it that way, pure brainstorming for 30 minutes, okay? After that 30 minutes, what I want you to do, and actually, looks like I'm missing one of my little boxes on here, is we're going to start to prioritize. That's box number 2. So you're going to take 30 minutes and you're going to start to say, okay, of these brainstorming ideas, which one do I really think makes the most sense? Which ones should I have higher on the page, lower on the page, and so forth? Because all ideas are not created equal. Some ideas are really good. Some ideas require a lot of infrastructure. Some ideas will take you 2 years to implement. Some ideas will take you 30 minutes. I mean, all that good stuff. So what I want you to do is try to prioritize. And that's literally just putting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No 1A, 1B, 1C. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you're struggling, do a 2-part exercise, meaning try to find the top 5 on the list and then let the rest sit. Because if you have 20 on the list, it's not as important what's number 14 versus number 15. What we're really trying to do is get to that top 5, top 8. Okay? From that, I want you to start to put time around it. When I talk about these start and end times, what I want you to do is understand how long does it take? How much time will it take to actually get the impact of this? So therefore, you're starting to say, yeah, this is about a 30-day project. This is a 40-day project. This is a this and that. And I'll talk about this more. I have a little slide that I'll show you on how to prioritize from there. Okay? So this is now all in that next 30-minute slot. Now you have an hour left. And then that hour left, this is where you're going to take those maybe top 8, top 5, and you're going to start to prioritize and then put your plan together on what would you do or how you would implement it. Now, for some of you, you may say, oh my goodness, Stephanie, how can I plan my whole business in 2 hours? Yes. If we had the luxury of 3 or 4 weekends, if we had a luxury of a 3-day, 4-day session, I would definitely do it in multiple days. I actually do some more of my planning in multiple days. But some of that is because I had to build the discipline around planning. So now I can go through that like teeth pulling exercise that it takes for me to do it over multiple days because I've gotten the stamina. I've gotten used to it. For many of you, it may be like, oh my goodness, Stephanie, I am not ready for this. I have always said I wanted to plan, and then I never do it because I get too busy. And if you're that person, start with 2 hours. Get as much done as you can in 2 hours. And normally in 2 hours, you're going to come out with a clear set of maybe 2 goals. Now, I mentioned earlier, optimal thinking, I like people to have 3 to 4 goals in a year. But if you're going to go with the 2-hour session, let's only focus on getting 2 goals for the year. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to just get you started. We're trying to get some of the goals flowing through your system. And then as we talk about in this webinar and in the next webinar, we're going to talk about how to drive some action, get some results. Because once you feel those results, you'll be more willing to carve out the time for the extra 2 hours or the extra day that it takes. And also, you'll feel more inspired by it. So don't short circuit yourself and try to do it the ultimate perfectionist way. Just get started. And like I said, do 2 hours. Okay. Now, for some of you, what I like to do in a lot of these webinars is everybody's in different places. So, like I mentioned, you got to build your stamina up to this. You got to get used to doing goal setting. And to do that, what you have to do is you have to understand where you are. Now, I prefer people to goal set for an entire year or a couple of years in advance. Like if you've ever heard of business planning, people talk about 3 to 5 year plan. Those are awesome. But we all can't do 3 to 5 year plans because for some of you, you're like, I can't figure out how to get 2 hours out of my day, Stephanie. How in the world can I plan that far out? And that's fine. That's why you want to look at step 1. When you start your planning process, before you start your 2 hour session we talked about, I want you to do step 1, which is determine where are you? Are you a newbie when it comes to kind of goal setting? Are you in the average range or are you advanced? And what I mean by that is a newbie is somebody who's maybe brand new, you haven't been in business that long, you've struggled with getting goal setting or doing it before, then let's take the newbie approach. And what that means is your goal setting plans are going to be more monthly. They're going to be 60-day action plans. They're going to be a little bit shorter term projects. I'm not going to ask you to look at what you're going to get done for the whole year and how the whole year is going to impact your business. Instead, I'm going to say 60 days, 90 days out. 60 days out, or maybe monthly. Maybe you got to start small because you're like, Stephanie, I don't have time. I can't figure it out. Then your 2 hours is literally to plan the next month or the next 60 days. Okay? So let me know how many people are my 60-dayers out there on your Facebook comments. I'm just curious how many people are going to be my newbies and be my 60-day folks. Perfect. Ooh, somebody's saying they're committing to 2 hours this Friday. I'm loving it. Now, average are people who can start to plan on a quarterly basis, which means in the next 30 days, in the next 6 months, this is where I see myself. This is what I see achieving. So if you feel you're kind of in the average bucket, let me know on Facebook you're an average. And in advanced are people who are going to start to look yearly. You're going to start to look at this full year. You're going to start looking at 2 years, 3 years, more years down the line. For most small businesses, when I say small, meaning like sub 25 employees, sub 10 employees, most of you are probably going to be a year to 2 years out. 3 to 5 year planning it's normally for a much bigger size business. But I don't know, many of you might have been in business for 10 years. If that's the case, you're probably going to fall in that advanced bucket. So that's the first step. Before you go into your 2 hour session, you got to know how long or how far out do you need to make these plans so that session can be more efficient. Now, if you're like most of us and you struggle with coming up with that 2 hour session and you're an average person, what that means is you may do that 2 hour session every 90 days. So therefore, you have a session for planning for January, February, and March. Then the end of March, you do another 2 hours that helps you shore up any of your plans from January, February, and March, but also prepares you for April, May, and June. That's how you get there. You don't have to try to do it all. Don't overwhelm yourself. You're already super, uber busy. So break up your planning. Kind of adapt your goal planning process to your business because you'll be more likely to be successful if you do that. And you'll be more likely to set these goals and implement these goals. Now, if you're an advanced person, even if you're planning a whole year in advance, it doesn't mean you don't do those touch points. It's just that what I tend to do is when I plan out my whole year, then once a quarter, I will do a shorter session. I don't need maybe 2 hours. I may do an hour session. And all it is more of a status update and adjustment to my goal setting plan. So once again, like I said, break this up, break it down so that you can actually say, hey, I'm a newbie. I'm going to do a 60-day plan. And at the end of 60 days, I'm going to sit down and plan again. That's how you get there. That's how you get it done. All right. Does that make sense, everyone? Am I getting some head nods over there? I'm just looking real quick to see if they are. Now, for some of you, you may be saying, okay, Stephanie, I know you said carve out 2 hours, but how in the world do I even get 2 hours out of my schedule? Now, it's hard for me to tell you how to get it out of your schedule, but what I find works the best is number one, scheduling it. Number two, scheduling it during what we consider your more downtime. And then you have to prioritize it. You have to make it happen. So think about in your business, what are the quietest times? If you're a bakery, maybe most of your baking is done early in the morning. By 3 or 4 o'clock, you're really done. You're either just shipping, or if you're in retail, you're just really getting customers and coming in. So maybe your planning time is that 3 to 5, is that later in the day window. If you're a retail outlet, you have to look, or your online shopping, maybe you have an online shopping store, you want to think about, okay, when is the quietest time? What are my days during the week that I have less orders online? If you're coaching, you do a lot of coaching. Most of us do it on the weekdays. If you're doing the weekdays, then vice versa. Now, for some of you, I know you're holding down full-time jobs and you're doing your vegan business on the side. And if that's the case, it's like, oh my goodness, how do I get this done? How do I make it happen? What I use is I use holidays. Like we just had MLK Day. In February, we have, President's Day, I believe, coming up. Use those holidays as your 2-hour window, because for many of you, if you're not in retail necessarily, for many of you, it is going to be a quieter day. For some of you, if you're doing full-time jobs and you're also doing this, you may have off on those days. So what I try to do is sometimes leverage those holidays, and holidays that are not necessarily, holidays where I normally have big plans, that I can use those because they're quieter days to do some planning. Okay. So we have one coming up in February. So I'm hoping to see some of you guys leverage that. Okay. All right. Just looking through the comments. Any questions so far? Is this feeling good? Are you feeling a little inspired? I just want to, goal setting can feel like, can feel like the stuff that is like, I know I have to do it, but I don't want to do it. So I want to make sure you walk away from tonight's session feeling really excited about jumping into it, and it not feeling like it's a heavy load on your shoulder. Okay. Now, the other thing to do, I talked about brainstorming. I talked about, breaking up your 30 minutes, the other 30 minutes, and so forth. But for some people, it's always like, well, Stephanie, how do I get started? So I want to show you different ways to get started. Because depending on your personality, your style, your discipline, it's going to be a little different. And for some of you, I would use this kind of page where you pick out who you are, what kind of planning you're going to do. Then you look at kind of that second pillar I'm talking about here, and you literally say, what am I going to plan around? Now, if you're not sure where to start, where to dig in, then what I tell people is use these 4 buckets as a guide. Now, for me, what I do is I identify what my 4 buckets or 4 buckets of opportunity are. If you're not sure what those 4 buckets are, just use the 4 I have on the page, which is there should be a goal around profit. There should be a goal that helps you grow. There should be a goal for your customer base. And then I always like to have a goal that's kind of community-based, something where I can either give back, where I can set up free events, free activities, things where I can do, maybe if you're in a retail, you do giveaways or things like that. Now, these do not have to be the only 4 buckets. One of your buckets may be operations. One of your buckets may be team or resources, because maybe your business has grown to a certain point that you need to have a goal around how do you set up, organize, or build a team to make things happen. So like I said, these 4 buckets are what you want to make them. But if you're not sure where to start with these 4 buckets. So when you start to brainstorm, you brainstorm in each one of these buckets. So you brainstorm profit opportunities for your business. You brainstorm growth opportunities for your business. You brainstorm customer and community. So let me give you some examples in each bucket to kind of help you get there. When I talk about profit, This is where you're affecting direct bottom line. This is where you're looking almost at the numbers. So this is where you're talking about where is additional revenue opportunity for me. Maybe if you're doing cooking classes, the question will be, do I sell a series versus one? Do I give people options to create? Do I have series that connect to each other? Meaning if someone takes series A and completes it, what's their upgrade path? Meaning what would make them complete another series with me? And that may have to be with, you may have, vegan 101 or the basics. And then you may have other ones which are around vegan baking. You may have another one around vegan meals in 30 minutes or less. You may have vegan gourmet meals as an example, if you're doing cooking classes. Because what you're doing is you're trying to make sure, or you may be looking at your product line and literally saying, if I create these upgrade paths, if I create these opportunities, I can drive growth because I can take existing customers and create opportunities for these existing customers to reorder, to repurchase. So that's what I mean when I think about revenue options. The other thing I talk about when I talk about revenue options is diversity of your revenue. If you've been doing cooking classes, the question is going to be, well, what other products, what other things can you offer that will diversify your business? Can you sell the PDFs of the recipes that you create? Do you do cooking classes, and do you sell, and it doesn't have to be cooking class, I'm using as an example. Let's use skincare product. Maybe you do a kind of like a Tupperware party as an example, and have people sit around and everyone kind of chills and tries the product, tries the creams, tries the scrubs, depending on the product that you're selling. And then after that, people can purchase the item. So it's a great way to introduce people to the product. People can buy it. And maybe what you do is you start to think about, from a revenue option standpoint, is, do you create gift baskets that people can buy for other people? Do you create these events that people can buy at special events in addition to buying online? So think about, how do you create other revenue pillars in your business? And then expense management, I've talked about before. Always think about how to get that cost down. Now, growth is normally an expansion opportunity. Say, for example, you do food delivery and maybe you're in Whole Foods. You may be thinking about, okay, I'm in my local Whole Foods. How do I get into regionally these Whole Foods? Or how do I get into other natural food stores that they can feature and have my products? So that's what I mean by growth. And that's a little bit different than profit, where obviously any of these things can overlap very easily. Customer is the next big bucket that I want you to think about. The reason I put customer in here as a goal setting bucket is because it's so important to take care of your customers. I think sometimes we get really caught on the product, the website, the marketing, and all that stuff is so important. But often, sometimes you'll have more repeat customers. You will have customers longer. Say you sell like a monthly plan, so you do online training or online classes, or you have a monthly program where people sign up and get certain coaching and training. Maybe you have a box service where you send out products once a month to people if they're signed up for a subscription. Those people will stay longer if you think about, what can you do to optimize that experience? What can you do to get people to stay or stick longer? And not just that, sometimes even if you're doing things like cooking classes, how do I make a cooking class very optimal? Do I send information before a cooking class? Do I send them prep information so they get there, they're ready to go? Do I send them features of some of the ingredients that I'm going to use, so when I get into the cooking class, I can show them how to use it? If you're going to teach them how to dry saute, as an example, you might send them a quick article about dry sauteing before they come to the cooking class so that they're prepped and ready. And what happens is it helps get people in the mindset. It gets people excited. They're getting information beforehand. Same thing with products. If you ship out vegan shoes, belts, clothing, you may put something in the box that talks about how the product is sourced, how it's ethically sourced. You may talk about what inspired this line of product or clothing or fashion. If you do skincare products, you may talk about different uses or alternate ways to use it for daily use or long-term or deep cleanse. So thinking about how to enhance that customer experience can often make people rebuy, reorder, share, and tell others about it. So that's why we want to make sure we brainstorm in that area. In the community, I've talked about before, if you want to do donations, if you want to sponsor events, I always try to do myself some free events every year. Free activity, I volunteer for things. This is important to me, so that's why it's on my list. But you can obviously put this in any other buckets. What do you guys think? Has anyone used these 4 buckets before or ever thought about brainstorming in categories so that you can get your brainstorming grounded? Because what happens is when you don't use these 4 buckets, it's easy for things to be only in one area. So it's all product, or it's all expansion, and you don't get a holistic business view. Now, at the end of the day, what I end up having often is 1 goal per bucket is normally how I do it. So I'll brainstorm in each of these 4 buckets, come up with ideas, and then I'll come up with the top idea for each one of these buckets. Now, for some of you, you may brainstorm in these buckets and then say, okay, how do I come up with the top idea across all the buckets? That's your business. You have to kind of decide what works for me. I'm just giving you 1 or 2 different ways to do it. Okay. But this is when you talk about the money slide, this is the money slide that can help you get there. Okay. And then after that, when you start to get into execution, and we'll talk more about this in our next webinar in February, is to help you evaluate, to help you prioritize, to help you kind of take these goals so they don't become just dust catchers, so they don't turn into that tool that just kind of sits around, is you're going to eventually translate these into actual projects. We're literally going to talk about, if you want to get 15 new clients in your wellness business, in your coaching business, what projects need to spin off to make that happen. So I won't go into too much detail tonight because we're going to spend a whole webinar next month talking about it, but that's where you're going. So I just want to make sure you know kind of where you're going, because I don't want you to think that the whole process is just putting some goals on a sheet of paper and saying, cool, I'm walking away. If you have more time, then let's sit down and look at these 3 buckets, because what you want to think about is what projects go underneath them, who would be responsible for them, what kind of financial benefit can I expect from what I'm doing? And if it's a community one, it may not be financial benefit. It may be community benefit. I just switched that one around. And then what kind of meetings or what do I need to do to make that happen? So whether it's team meetings to roll it out to the rest of your team or the people that work with you, whether it's you thought it out and you want to show it to your partner or show it to your investors and get their approval before you move forward. It's thinking about kind of what you're going to need kind of as your next steps to not only solidify this, but also to roll it out. Okay. But like I said, start with your first 2 hours. Your real big goal is to create the goals, get them in these pillars, and get it down to either 1 or 2 if you're a newbie, or 3 or 4 if you're in that average or advanced bucket. Okay. Does that make sense, everyone? Does that sound good? Feel good? I'm hoping so. I'm seeing some folks commenting here, so it sounds like it is. I'm glad to see that. I'm glad to hear that. Okay. And don't worry. I mean, we're going to be with you the whole step of the way this year. So each month, we're going to keep giving you pieces and building blocks and so forth to move you forward. Okay. So for a lot of you, you may say, okay, great, Stephanie. I understand how I'm going to use that 2 hours. I understand how I'm supposed to brainstorm in these 4 buckets that you told me about. But how do I prioritize? Because once you give me that whole long list, you may be saying to yourself, how in the world do I ever get this down to 1 or 2? Because if you're like me, I brainstorm a ton. I just sit around and I be thinking about all types of ideas, or I have ideas from previous years. We've been in business for almost 6 years now. Oh, almost 7 years. I guess now we're in 2016. So I have ideas that, carry forward from the previous year. So, it can be tough getting to that goal level and getting those solid numbers because the list can be tall. So what I recommend is use a tool like this to help you prioritize. And what I like to do is I like to do a lot of graphs and charts and tables. So this is kind of my little table idea. So what you want to do is, and I just for brevity, I don't have a number in my goal column. That's just because of time. Excuse me, because of space on the slide. But obviously you want a number in that column. But what we want to do is, what I like to do is jot down what the goal is I think I'm going to do. So that's the things I've been brainstorming. I like to put down the type of activity, support, what is really needed to achieve that goal, because I want to make sure I have the right frame of mind. And then I create 3 columns to help me prioritize. And what I do is I have a column for impact, a column for time, and a column for ease. Now, let me just take a quick break. Any questions so far? Because I'm going to walk you through this prioritization, but I want to make sure what you guys have seen so far makes sense. Okay, I'm just checking. Yep, it looks like it. You guys are saying it's making sense. So it looks like we're good. Perfect. Yep. Perfect. Okay. All right. I'm glad. All right. Looks like most people are nodding their heads over there. So I'm so excited. Okay. All right. So if we don't have any questions so far, let's talk about the prioritization. So I mentioned you want to have these 3 columns as ways to help you prioritize, because it's hard to kind of say, why is goal 1 better than the other? And what I do is reason I come up with what I call impact, time, and ease. Impact is because we're trying to swag it here. You're really kind of using your best guess estimate, because in 2 hours, you can't go pull reports and look at, it'd be great if you had that information before your meeting. So if you have your Google Analytics, and I saw somebody said that they were looking at their Google Analytics, pull that report before. If you have your customer reports, pull that report. If you've been really good and done your accounting, pull your revenue numbers so you know what your revenue is per month. Have all that stuff in front of you. It's great. But if you don't, and you're kind of like me and kind of like most people, when you go into kind of the goal setting mindset, you don't have all your numbers and graphs, because, I don't have a team that just creates reports for me. A lot of times you're going to kind of have to go off a general sense. And that's why I use things like impact. And what impact is what impact you believe it will have on your business from a financial and growth perspective. And what I do is I use things like high, medium, and low, because there's plenty of projects that we think are great projects, but when you think about it in the mindset of impact, they will have low impact on your business. So what you want to do is just do a chart just like this. You can, like I said, use a whiteboard, just draw the lines out and create that column and say, is it H, is it M, or is it L? That should take you pretty quick to do. Then put your blinders on and just think about time. How long will it, how long will it take to do this project? Is this kind of a long-term project or short-term project? Because some of your projects may take you 3 or 4 months to get it off the ground. Some of these projects, because it's just literally a long-term thing. It's just not something you can turn the boat that fast. And some things are short-term. The reason I want you to put that on there is because when you start to prioritize, you want to have a good mix of projects that are short and long. Because if you have everything that's long-term, what happens is it takes your business a really long time to get the impact of your projects. And instead, what we want you to do is I want you every month, every 2 months, that as you're making improvements, as you're working on projects, as you're doing these things to get these goals going, I want you to feel impact. So that means we got to have some things short and some things long. So we accomplish the big, but we also knock some of those small out the park, okay? So that's why you want to do the same thing. Put your blinders on, long-term, short-term, long-term, short-term, long-term, short-term, each one of the ideas. And then column number 3 is ease. And what I mean by that is ease of implementation, meaning does it need a lot of resources, need a lot of money? Is it a big project? Is it really something that's kind of heavy lift? And that's why I use kind of hard, medium, or easy. And once again, look at each project and just put down if it's hard, medium, easy. Just jot it down. And then when it's time for you to prioritize, now you can look across each goal and start to say, okay, if I need to prioritize these projects, what I want to make sure is I have some high impacting projects that are maybe medium to implement that are short term. And then I want a mix of one that's kind of maybe medium impact, easy to implement, and short term, because I want to get some big benefit or big pop in the first few months of the year. We need to pull in some revenue so we can invest in this other project that's high impact, but long term and hard. So that way, I don't know if you guys are following what I'm saying. I probably should have done the slide maybe a little differently, or had a second slide on here. Because what you're trying to do now is, when you try to compare and contrast project A versus project B, we're trying to compare it on basic metrics or similar metrics, so we can start to make your projects feel more like apples and apples. As opposed to when you just brainstorm them, they'll feel like apples, bananas, apricots, and oranges. So by adding these things, now you can say, okay, I'm going to create a little formula where I'm going to try to have a good high project that's short term, that's easy. So in the next 3 months, I can get a win. And then over the next 6 months, I want to look at projects that are maybe more high, maybe more long term. So it's 6 months, but it's medium, because I know I can get that done in 6 months. And now you're not just goal setting blindly, like I like project A or project 1 versus project 5 or project 10. Instead, you're picking projects that have some impact, that you know you can get done, and they're projects that are now starting to truly benefit and impact your business. All right. What do you guys think? You like that idea of prioritizing? Is that helpful to see kind of a simple way to prioritize your projects and be able to look at them? Yeah, it looks like you guys are saying yes, yes. Okay, cool. Well, we are getting close to the top of the hour. I want to mention 2 more things as we wrap up, but I do want to make sure if anyone has any questions, I want to make sure I tackle those. Any questions so far? Anything I haven't addressed? Anything that you feel like, what about this, Stephanie? How do I get this done? Especially when we talk, kind of to bridge you to the next webinar, which is next month, in setting your goals or getting things done. Just want to check here. I don't see any questions so far. Okay. All right. Good. Yeah. Yeah. One person said, yeah, they've done this similar in their corporate job. Yeah, you can tell my corporate background as well. But I find this stuff really works. The challenge is you have to adopt it to a small business mindset. Because what corporate businesses do are a little bit different in how they have resources, how they move things, revenue, money, and stuff like that. Us small business owners, we're working off of sometimes our, the change in our bank accounts. So what I want you to do is leverage with what a lot of the big companies do to organize, to focus, to drive prioritization. But what I also don't want you to do is lose sight of that you're a small business and we want to put it on scale. So that's why we're breaking it down into simple chunks. That's why we're saying things like plan 60 days at a time, plan 6 months at a time, because we got to make it work for your small business and work for you. Otherwise, we'll write these goals, you'll plan to do these things, and they just sit on the shelf. All right. So in our last minute, because I just noticed the time, I want to give you 2 tools to use, and I'll bring these up next month as well, because they're really huge when you get into action. Is that as you're starting to do goal setting, as you're starting to plan for your business, you're going to need a way to track all this information. You're going to need to be able to say, well, what are my goals? What are my projects? What are those things? So I want you to start thinking about, between now and the next webinar, when we start talking about translating these goals into action, and how do you put together those projects underneath it? How do you create tasks? How do you create owners? How do you spread this out with everything else that's going on in the world? I want you to do a little bit of pre-work for me, which is thinking about what tool you want to use. And these are 2 that I use. There's more tools out there. There's Asana, there's Team Manager, Team Worker. I forget how it's called. But the 2 that I use is a tool called Trello that you see here, and then Basecamp. Basecamp's probably one of my other faves. And what I want you to do is start to think about how we're going to track this information and what tool you're going to use. Now, so some of you just maybe want to use Excel. So you're going to put a Google Doc together and you're just going to type them up, type your goals, type your projects out. And I completely understand that. But if you can, if you'd like to use software, I find software really helps tracking tasks, to-dos, especially even if you're a solopreneur, because it makes you accountable to yourself. And if you have a team, these work even better. Look into some of these options. Basecamp does have a price. It's $20 a month. Trello, I believe they still have their free offering. So you can probably use them maybe as a free baseline if you're looking for something inexpensive. Most project management tools do. I'm just recommending the ones that I've personally used and liked, but you feel free to just type in Google, project management tools for small businesses, and there's a ton of them out there. So I want you to think about that in your session, because we want to get that tool up and running, be ready for that next webinar so we can not only get these goals in place, but we can start acting on them. And we'll use our next webinar. Our webinar is February 17th. So I'll send you guys out a reminder so you can sign up for that one. But we'll use our next webinar to help you drill down and really dig in. If you have time between now and then and you start to drill down into the action piece, please, please, please do it, because I will talk about it, as well as you can ask questions during the next one if you've done some of that work in advance. Okay? So with that, thank you, everyone, for joining us today. The time flew by. I had a few extra slides, but it seems like we are out of time today. But I hope this has been helpful. I hope this has inspired you to maybe do goal setting if you were on the fence. Like some of you, I've noticed in there that you have committed to do it. So I'm really excited to hear about your goal setting at our next webinar. Also, feel free to drop me a line anytime. I love hearing about what people are doing. And, if you do your brainstorming session and you want to share or tell me about it or get me fired up about it, please, please, please feel free to email me. I'd love to hear about it. So with that, thank you so much for joining. I hope you guys enjoyed today's webinar. I know I love doing these, and I love having you guys here. So until our next webinar in February, I look forward to hearing about your goal setting plans, and I wish you guys all the best, and sending out vegan hugs and love to all you business owners out there. Okay. All right, everyone, you take care, and I'll talk to you next month. All right. Bye. Someone said that the charts were a little fuzzy. If the charts are too small, you know what? I'll email out the chart and the slide. The two slides, I will email those out to everyone who registered for the webinar. So that way you guys will have those in your inbox. Give me till Friday to send that out to you. So if you're listening to the replay, I guess I'll get this out by Friday, the 22nd of January. I'll email everyone out the prioritization slide, and then the slide where I talk about the stamina, and has your 4 buckets on it. So I'll send those out to everybody so you can use them for your planning stages. Okay, sound good? Anything else? I'm just reading through here. Looks like we're good. All right, perfect. All right, so it looks like we're good. It looks like you guys are feeling inspired, and I see some people making some some commitments. So I'm really, really excited. Okay, great. All right, I'm gonna let you guys go. I have a wonderful, wonderful week. And if goal setting is in your future this weekend, I wish you all the best, and I'll talk to you later. All right, bye.